and mic. Okay, so that's
You're streaming as well?
and we're streaming, which is like it's the how you actually reach how you
Yeah, there's people. There's kids with his phone.
when you're gonna give me that.
Hey, I'm Megan from AbelCine, and I'm here in the Chicago office, and joining me today is Andy from LA and Jeff from New York. Thanks guys for joining today. And last year at this time, we talked about maybe 2016, what we decided to what you could see from us. So I wanted to get together and do that again. So how about we just touch base on trends of last year that we noticed, after the fact, and that'll come different we're excited to see this year. So I think two trends definitely from last year that we can touch on are HDR and virtual reality, right? So how did we kind of see those come to fruition?
Well, I think they were big buzzwords, both of them. But I think they're both well established now and become more of a reality. HDR, to start off, to say, sure we saw.
Actually, I heard black and white radio's coming back.
Hey guys, how's it going? We're going to go get started here today. I'm Andy Shipsides. Thanks for coming by. This is our first panel at NAB 2017. We have a great group of panelists here today talking about HDR, right? So that big technology, that big idea, something that really pushed us through last year, and now we're here, NAB 2017, talking about it again. So I have a fantastic group of panelists. I'm just going to do a quick intro of a group. We'll go left to right here. Steve Mahrer, Senior Technologist, Panasonic.
Good morning.
Gary Mandle, Senior Product Manager, Monitors at Sony.
Morning.
Marc Shipman-Muller, Product Manager, Camera at ARRI.
Good morning.
Larry Thorpe, Senior Fellow, Canon.
Old man.
Oh yeah, there he is. Jeremy Young, CEO of Atomos.
Hi, Andy.
So it's a great panel. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to try to keep this together here today with this great group of people. If you don't know these guys, these guys have all have a big stance in this industry. They've been involved at the beginning. I have to throw it to Larry at the end there, though. Larry's been here 50 years at NAB.
Wow.
So give it to Larry.
Larry, well done, mate. Well done.
So to start off the conversation, I think, as I said last year, HDR was the talk of NAB, right? It was a big push. And I really wanted just to jump in to how it's changed since last year. How did we, what's evolved? What's come out of that? How real is it? Larry, I want to start with you, just because I heard, because you've seen the changes. You've pushed SD to HD yourself, just if you physically made it happen years ago. So how are you seeing this evolution? How's it been since last year? How do you feel it's going so far?
Well, I'd say the last year has seen a tremendous amount of experimentation on the movie side, on the television side. On television with episodic studios, the HBOs of this world are all exploring HDR. The sports folks are all exploring what's HDR do for sports. Yeah. And this weekend I was at the Sports Video Group and I was looking at what they've just done on the Masters. And they were doing very serious HDR experimentation. Talking to all of these folks, it's almost the same message. We're discovering the perils while we discover the pearls. That, we get the beauty of it, but we get trapped. And on the golf course, exposing for the faces, the caddies' white shirts were blazing. And you sort of say, well, I'm supposed to be watching the game, but this caddy is distracting me. So it's that sort of thing that is still being worked on. And, do we change shirts, or do we just find another way, another OETF or whatever? It's a work in progress. But the good news is an awful lot of people working on it now, seriously, in the 1080p domain, in the UHD 4K domain. And that's great.
So it's moving along, it's evolving.
It's moving along.
Which is and I think we need to see that, right, to start this off. So, get a little feedback on the speakers here, guys. So let's go into displays first, because I think that's the place literally we see these things happen, and I think the evolution has to start with how we actually visualize this, right? I mean, our camera's been capturing it for a long time. We're going to go there and talk about that. But on the display side, Gary, I know Sony as well as Canon and the team has been working really hard on the display, make this, and on Panasonic side too, absolutely, to produce a workable reference monitor and a workable home monitor. So what are the challenges there? Have you seen a lot of growth in the post industry into this area? Are you taking, and is it happening? The investments are happening in the spaces?
Oh, absolutely. In the major productions, all of the OTT distributors all have adopted this very quickly. They are all buying new displays that are designed to HDR, to display HDR images. And that brought in a lot of challenges. On the camera side, since you have an image sensor that is bringing light in, it's a little easier to get a wider bandwidth and make a wider dynamic range.
Sure.
But on the monitor, you got to make this light. And that's a bigger issue, power, heat concerns, everything else. So we had to actually step back and go back to the drawing board in our OLED development to come up with panels specifically designed to handle the extra brightness and the extra range that's required for that. So in essence, from the standard dynamic range panel, we had to go tenfold in development and tenfold in range in order to meet what everybody needed for HDR production. So that was a big shift. Now that we've done it, it's been readily adopted. Now people are seeing the images that they were capturing, just as you said, we've had it in cameras for quite a while, but now you actually can see it. And now things like black detail and things in the shadows, textures in the face, all are coming out and becoming much more lifelike. Given that the change really is only on the display side as far as new equipment, it's very easy to adopt. It's not like what we had to do with 3D, where you're basically doubling everything, and that added so much more cost. The cost to actually do this is really not that much, and the effect that you get and what you can give to your customer is significantly better with HDR than what we've been doing before.
So you said the word 3D there, so I have to bring it up when we talked about this. And Marc, we were just talking about this before. We all have that, that bad taste in the back of our throat around 3D, and it still does well in the theaters, and it's a good place for it. But it's not 3D. Would you say? I mean, what do you guys think? We're beyond that, right? We all agree. I think we all agree. I feel like it is. It's not the 3D flash in the pan.
No, in terms of 3D was an interesting experiment, but obviously a lot of the public has issues seeing 3D, whether they're one-sided, whatever else. But that 3D discriminates against your wife, your daughter, your mother-in-law, whatever else. Not good news. And also it's quite intrusive we're having to wear glasses.
Right.
HDR, I equate it to somewhat like recording bad audio. We've been recording television with crushed whites for 80 years.
Yeah.
And now we have 20 dBs of headroom. So suddenly we have the brilliance back, we have the specular. It's a more natural experience. And people say, it looks like 3D. No, it looks like reality. You're seeing something for the first time you've never seen before. Specular highlights, deep color, things like that. And that's what makes it a very immersive experience. And anybody can see it from 100 yards away. And that's the big selling point. It looks natural, it's easy, it's non-intrusive, and it's very, very engaging.
You have to see it though, right? You have to see. I think that's the one thing. It's hard. We don't have a display. Jeremy has a display down there, which shows it. But I think probably at home you're not actually seeing it. I have a feeling you'll be watching it on your computer. But so that's maybe one of the issues is that people have to actually see it, right?
Yes, I mean I think once you've seen it, you can't go back. And I've talked to a number of directors. When they've seen their first test of some of their own footage shown in HDR, they don't want to go back. And in fact, this is one of the problems. There's one huge discussion. Do you grade in HDR first, and then do you trim pass for SDR, or do you first grade in SDR and then trim for HDR? And I think there seems to be a consensus that grading HDR first also gets you a better SDR, but there's a problem in that your director is really disappointed once they see the SDR version. Now, you were talking in terms of the cost of everything, and also in terms of the cost of 3D. Now, we loved 3D. We sold twice of everything.
Yeah,
it was great.
2 times. Yeah, it's great.
But I think HDR is much less expensive, and it's also much less expensive in terms of the data rate.
Yeah.
If you look at all the new technologies, all the new stuff we can do to improve the image, we can do high dynamic range, wide color gamut, higher bit depth, higher frame rate. HDR is really the one thing we can do that has the least more bits for the highest impact.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. So on that then, and on that experience, SDR, HDR, let's talk about on set, right? So HDR on set, I think that's the, right away, a place that we can all experience it perhaps. Because I think, it is an experiential thing, the impact, you have to see it. So what are the inroads on the camera side and as well on the monitor side of getting it out on set? I think, I've seen a couple sets that are doing this, but can you talk about that on-set workflow? Jeremy, I know you have a new tool there that is actually meant for that purpose.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Thanks, Andy. On-set monitoring, we went through the same experience. We saw the Dolby 4000 nit HD panel, I think 2 years ago here, and we just knew we had to bet all of our business on taking our monitors there first. And we've been now had products in the market doing conversions from log to our panels and showing that extra dynamic range to customers from these affordable cameras, which is where we're coming from. And we're now going halfway up to where these guys play most of the time to try and make it affordable for on-set monitoring for the masses in pro video. And where do we see it going? We're trying to converge more of the high-quality recording with the monitoring. And we call it shoot what you see, which is exactly the natural life that you're talking about in the representation of the amazing sensors from all the companies here on this panel. And we take those amazing images and display them in the current technology as best we can. We've got about 10.5 stops on this panel, which is across our range of products. And I think that is now becoming more mainstream, but where I think we need to really work hard is the usability of these. You still have to make sure you're in the right log curve. You have to make sure that you've got the right color gamut. You have to make sure that everything's set up correctly to make it look right, because just like the masters, if you don't get it right, it is quite a horrible result. Even in the same camera makers, we've got S-Log 3, and then we've got S-Cine Gamut at the same time. And if we do that in Rec 709, it looks completely different. And people are kind of struggling with that, where they've got one setting wrong. They're so close to greatness, but they don't. So I think as an industry, the standardization of reading what the sensors are giving us from a monitor perspective will allow customers to then take that through to grading, which is what we're trying to do here. We record it, we then connect it to the computer. We work with the camera makers on the acquisition side and the NLE makers on the post-production side to make sure that people are looking at the same thing all the way through. And we are finding the same result, that HDR editing and then trimming for SDR is the right workflow, and people are getting a really good result in SDR. And then our job is to make sure that it goes to hybrid log gamma and PQ for the displays, the consumer displays that are trying to display it. So I think really trying to get that natural look is the goal for everyone.
So Larry, building on that, I know and Canon has a variety of tools that are built for this. And I know on the camera side, let's say, there's the idea of building in features that sort of enable this easier, I guess, so that you could plug in a TV on set or without any special feature and get that. So what are the camera manufacturers doing that you're seeing, and Canon front at the very least, to sort of enable these workflows?
Yeah, we've been working on what we call an ecosystem, where trying to have our cameras connect to an on-set reference display and then use that display to convey as much information to a crew. For example, all of the metadata of all the camera setups, is carried on our signal that comes across either on the proxy or the raw into our display, and our display portrays that in the display so a whole group can see precisely how the camera's set up. Waveform monitors built in. We've changed the scaling on our waveform monitor in the display so that if we're dealing with a Canon log or 800%, it shows 800%. If we switch to our new camera that goes to 1600%, the graticule changes to 1600%. If a PQ comes in at 4000, the graticule changes to that. So all of these were just things we learned because the waveform monitors become, I think, much more important in the world of HDR. The other area that I think, and it's a challenge to the displays, is the cameras are becoming amazing in how far down they go. And HDR is all about going two directions, widening the contrast range. Going down is every bit as important. Every bit as important as going down.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, episodics and movies, they love those deep shadowed movies, moody scenes. But grading that is a challenge.
Yeah.
And exploiting the capability of cameras. We get into these battles about this log curve, that log curve, and we have two or three, and there's great discussions which is best. Well, you know, you want to keep it simple if it's television. If it's episodic television, you may want to go way down.
Yeah.
We have log curves with that, but it's difficult. And the setup of the display may have a terrific contrast range, but you better have it set up. And then you got to set it up for the viewing environment. You don't always have a pitch dark tent. So these are little challenges that are being worked on.
Yeah. So, Marc, same question for you then. I mean, I know, and the challenges are many. I think this is really an important conversation because, I think it's come up already 3 times in this conversation of the complications that go into this. But again, how is ARRI trying to push this? Again, the camera can make that range. We know the camera has it. How are we pushing how are we pushing it to enable the viewing of an onset? How are we pushing it so that we can make sure that flow goes?
Sure. We've had now in the LXS XT 3D LUTs, and we had 3D LUTs for PQ for a while now.
Right.
But we've been playing with those, and we've learned a whole bunch of things. We now, in the newest software, we're integrating hybrid log gamma as well. And we also learned that, for instance, the status information around your image looks fine in SDR. It's nuclear bright in HDR. But a different nuclear bright in hybrid log gamma than in PQ, so we actually had to now tone that down. Similarly, false color behaves very differently for SDR, PQ, HDR, and hybrid log gamma, so we had to change that.
Wow.
Then you have to make sure you record the correct HDR metadata, so we're doing that. And all those things we're now learning little by little how to do that. I was at a panel yesterday on HDR where they were saying, well, you don't really need to monitor on this set. You just expose properly and everything is fine. And I vehemently disagree with that. Yeah. I had a DP in Munich recently. We have our own Dolby grading suite. And he brought some footage from his latest movie. And he had this one scene where there was a slow dolly track. There was a lady sitting at a desk with a laptop and the bright window in the background with the sun. So he starts out, no sun in the camera, the sun hits the camera, you get tons of flares, then the laptop covers he kind of moves around to where she's sitting there, half her face is lit by the sun. There's no way you can predict in SDR at what point in the scene you're going to get into trouble in HDR. Yeah. And the DP
that
was
sun's
amazing.
going to be bright now. That sun's going to get really bright.
Yes, but you don't know where it is too bright. As Larry said, you may have a white shirt, you may have some jewelry that may look okay, or it may just be too nuclear that it takes your attention away from the main actress. Mm-hmm. And you can't really predict where that happens. Yeah. So I've seen some interesting experiments. I visited Panavision last week, and they have a very interesting system where they do a quad split for television shows. And on the top, they show A camera SDR, B camera SDR, then A camera HDR, and B camera HDR. So they can look at A and B camera and the SDR and the HDR image all at the same time and judge what's happening with these two images. Because, I love the X300 monitor and your monitor as well, but they're a little too expensive to bring on the set right now.
So, Steve, same question then, and then I want to get into the HLG conversation and all these, because I think these are all interesting. And then, Marc made me a little upset there because I had suddenly the realization that I had to have 4 monitors on set at once. But okay, anyway, so same question for you around.
Again, it's kind of interesting looking at the concept of, oh, do we do shoot log, do we grade 709 and do a trim pass for HDR? You can do that, but what is interesting, on our booth we have an HDR SDR examples. We're showing our new 65-inch OLED monitor, and this is about a 900 nit monitor, and a 65-inch is a big display. Well, we're looking at regrading existing contents, and it's not just exposure, it's camera framing. We have one good example of, it's one of the simple things, there's a boxing scene. We shot this on our Vericam LT demo tape last year for a 709 finish. Looks great. Those fluorescent light bulbs at 1,000 nits are quite large in the frame. So would you shoot it that way? Would you use power windows? Because your iris closes down in your eye and you dump the blacks in the scene. And that's just, we all do, that's human nature. So there's technical aspects of shooting, exposure. There's also things like framing, composition, and those get into it quite a lot as well. And they can affect things. Maybe you can't easily do a quick trim pass. Maybe you need to do some more exotic reframing, recalibration, things like that. So it's not just a shooting thing or monitoring thing, but on-set monitoring, knowing you have a big bright sky that is too big and too bright, will definitely help you falling into a pitfall of reshooting too.
I mean, and in that same vein, the choices on set are changing then, right? HDR is letting you choose. Well, you actually have to make the choice, I guess, right? If you're going to frame something right, sun it, or with that specular highlight, there's the choice to be made. And so what I'm taking from this is that having HDR and having a monitor on set to see this is actually quite important. And I've heard from other DPs that sometimes, as Larry brought up, sometimes in the dark areas too. And sometimes they kind of hide things in the dark areas, like they're duvetine over stuff, and then so it's actually quite an important step, I think, to see these things. Now, just a side note, and I want to come back around again. One of the things that I think, bringing up those specular highlights, one of the all these demo reels that we all have in our booths, and they're great, is we tend to kind of push things a little too far. Now, I mean, I guess it's sort of like the 3D punch to the face that you have at a dark ride.
The broomstick.
Yeah, the broomstick. Got you. Yeah.
HD to 11.
Yeah, HD. Go see all that. So, I mean, is this just because it's new? What?
I jump in. Last week in Hollywood, there was a Hollywood SMT meeting, and it was about HDR grading. Can you trust your monitor? What do you see? There was panel discussions. What's interesting for that little sort of hamburger and dinner, and the examples of the different there, professional and consumer. And we had Netflix feeding UHD and HDR to this monitor, which is rather nice. Also, a good example is streaming UHD HDR. What's fascinating to myself and some of the others there was most of the professionals, whether the colorists, the producers, or the camera people, or even just engineering people like myself, knowing that it's great, it's beautiful, but it's too bright. I don't want to watch that movie 1,000 nits. I'd be happy with 300 or 400 for highlight. So there's an aesthetic here of, again, going to 11, we can do it. Doesn't mean it's matter. HDR should be about quality and more. And there's growing, a realization that, we can make it look exceptionally beautiful without changing the character of a movie or a production. So, mine as well.
Yeah. And I think that's the next phase. Right now it's one where we have to put the infrastructure down to make sure that this all works. Yeah. And then creatives are going to come and they're going to figure out what they want to do with it. I don't think quite there yet. They're starting to figure this out. We still don't have all the infrastructure in place, but that'll happen soon. And then I think it'll get really interesting.
Yeah, so.
I think you sit behind colorists when they're working on something like this. Initially, when this came out, it was really interesting is they wanted to take advantage of the brightness of the display. They'd pump everything up. But what we found out is it gave these weird looks, and you lost these. Now what we're seeing is that the colorists are great about the same level. If you look at your mid-levels, it's about the same as where it was with SDRs. It's that much different. And what they're going to do is they're going to take the accents, or they're going to take a part of the picture, and they're going to use that to move the story, or move the viewer. So they're using it as something to actually tell the story, not just to make enhancement or to overblow things. And they're learning very quickly. So I think you're going to see some gorgeous stuff coming out here very fast.
Yeah, can I add to that? That's exactly what's happened. We're on about, I think it was last year, just after NAB, at Sony Pictures, and they were doing an S2 movie. It was a lower cost production. They used a Shogun 7-inch HDR monitors, and they proved that they could get a good result. And so they brought these directors in, and we set it up. They'd never seen the product working together before, and it was called Godiva. The movie just released it recently, and I showed the director how to use the HDR slider that we've got on our panel to resolve more of the dynamic range. And immediately, it was a dark movie, a horror kind of movie. So immediately he stopped the camera up and put the HDR right to the end. And it created a really dark mood. If you red lights or changed it to a little bit, and it was right there at where he wanted to be. And that in literally 2 minutes. One test, and he was in creativity, using the new tools. And that's what the monitor gave him, that opportunity. With it for a second and went, oh, that's what I want. So I think you're right. Set the scene for what this is capable of doing, and then we'll use it, and then we create tools around that within us to enhance and speed up and make that process simpler.
We've seen that with some scenes with darks, a discussion about, well, can't we do a little HDR? So they, put a candle over there or move the lamp. No, they did, to just do something that gives you a little pop.
Yeah.
And then you get the inadvertent, where they had a moody scene and a lady with a necklace. And as she turned at one point, one of the little beads popped. And they said, oh, we can't have that. So these are the things they're learning. It's tricky.
We saw a very similar thing. We were on a set soundstage at some chairs, and there was a window in the side, and the camera that they were using had so much range, you could see it on the monitor. When they hand over by the window, you wanted to look through the window. You're seeing things out the window, and they wanted, the idea with actors as your point of interest, but it immediately you out away from the story. So now you do have these more tools, but you're going to have to be much more careful on how you actually use them.
Also tricky, high dynamic range gets you contrast, which increases the precision or sharpness. So something like a lit backdrop may look real in SD, look totally fake in HDR. You really have to, the more hiding the shadows, you may not see it in SDR, you totally get it in HDR. There's a lot of little things that the creatives now have to pay attention to, and do that if you cannot see the HDR image on the set.
Just like when we went from NTSC out to HD.
Yeah, the discovery of, it looked the monster better in 16 mil, and now we have to, oh crap, we have to have cup,
The other lesson that we've been learning, a camera manufacturer, but also very much a lens manufacturer, is the enhancements in the pulsar lens. We specular reproduction, but lenses can do funny things to speculars, and we've had to do things in our more recent designs to anticipate that. If we can go 1600% speculars, and a super example I saw the other, the Masters, it was shot across the green, and it was the Pacific, and the sun was down, and the tweet on that, it was dramatic. Everybody got at those speculars, they're perfect. But there were little aberrations over the corners, some of them. And that's the other thing we've learned, is the chromatic aberrations, which they're over. We can only get them down so far, and they sort of say, well, they're basically invisible. They may be invisible in HD, but in 4K sensors, we get to see a little more. HDR is elevating your color volume.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And it's dealing with wide color gamut as well. Suddenly, a little aberration is visible.
Yeah.
And that's something we're having to make sure in our latest 4K lenses that we drive those aberrations down another notch.
So it's got to be, you have the 4K lens, and then you have the 4K HDR lens, and then you have to have the,
Well, we have two categories. We're calling one thing 4K premium. They're the ones where we went all out to anticipate.
and do they cost a bit more?
HDR.
They cost a bit more, right?
They cost a they cost a little more.
Are we not then just beelining to dual exposure and AI type of processing?
Try dual exposure with the fireworks.
Not going to work.
It looks like bad 3D.
Not going to work.
With one eye.
Because the photography world's been struggling with this for a while, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that kind of processing is becoming more and more prevalent.
Except I think there's a fundamental difference in photography. When you take an HDR picture, you take dual exposure, then you combine the two, and then you display them on an SDR display.
Yeah, true.
That makes it look hyper real and fake, in my opinion.
Images, they haven't moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
When they
I
move,
mean, there's a lot of challenges.
But I think
we're nowhere near that yet.
Displaying it on SDR display makes it very different from what we're doing here, which is capturing HDR and then displaying HDR.
Yeah, something like motion trails and compression. It's not a good thing. Having two images which are disparate in the same frame, it blows up all sorts of things. And the last thing you want to do is to take an HDR, UHD through a limited pipe. It needs all the help it can get. So,
and this is where my customers, who are definitely more the entry level in the marketplace, moving up to aspiring to rent an ARRI camera, they're asking these exact questions. They're saying, well, doesn't my iPhone do HDR in photo mode? Why can't I? So having good answers for that is really important for the mass market. And I think it's been a great discussion from my perspective, just to hear where you guys are at and the problems that are coming. So no jewelry on set is what I'm...
No jewelry on set. Now, I think when you just mentioned problems, I think there's one problem we haven't resolved, which is judder. As we go brighter, your ability to see the differences in brightness increases, and all of a sudden the images, they strobe, they judder.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have found a solution to that. Personally, I don't think high frame rate is the solution because that's just way too big a hammer.
Yeah.
I
Can't stand looking at it on TV.
What I've recently seen is some stuff that Real D has done. They've bought the TESIF system, Tony Davis, what they call now True Motion.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're actually shooting at high frame rate and high shutter angle, and then they're interpolating to create synthetic shutter angles to create a specific motion blur characteristic.
Between the frames, right?
And I think that's the way for us to keep 24 frames a second, but avoid the judder. But that's a completely uncharted territory.
Yeah.
That's still the Wild West. But as far as I'm concerned, an unresolved issue that we still have to face.
That's actually a function we're seeing now in a lot of TVs. Is you're seeing these 120 hertz LCD TVs at the home, and that's one of the advantages is by you can take a process like that and you do interpolate in between frames and give a similar look. The issue there is the Real D system would be very consistent. The TVs, depending on what manufacturer you go to, you're going to get a different result.
We all know that this doesn't always work out exactly the way we like. You know, I mean, I probably everyone on this panel got a TV at home and went, "Turn that off." You know, like, oh my God. But I think that's a really interesting topic. I think by itself, that idea that we have to control the judder that we love essentially in 24 frame, but actually adjust that now to get that result. That's a really it's a complicated topic. And it's still there's a lot more to learn.
There's one cautionary thing I would like to suggest. Things like 3D works very well if it's done properly in a controlled environment and viewed in a controlled environment. Done with 2 iPhones, elastic band, and someone's bicycle, it can be rather scary. We have to be careful HDR doesn't suffer the same fate in terms of amateurs giving it a bad name, because it could very well severely delay the implementation.
Yeah, which is why the tools that they use should be more automated, simpler, should be connect to the camera, display the right log curve, show the right
automatically,
and that's where we were discussing just prior to this panel that the HDSDI standards are being defined now, and we have an open protocol that all the, especially the Japanese makers have adopted over HDMI, trying to make the affordable DSLR kind of video cameras available with triggers and time code, and everyone supported that to make it simple for the user. So we're extending that into HDR now, and we'd love to be a part of that HDSDI or SDI protocol development so that we can then put that into the HDMI world as well.
I think there's hope, though. I was recently walking with my wife in an electronics store in Berlin, and we walked past this LG OLED showing actually some footage that Bill Bennett had shot for us. It was very bizarre in Berlin.
And it showed up.
Bill Bennett, silver plane, flying along.
And my wife, a beautiful shot, though.
And my wife, she's an actress and a complete technophobe. You know, she's like, print for me. Don't show me how to print. You print it. And she looked at this LG OLED and said, "Oh my God, this looks really cool. We should buy one of those."
So it worked. It worked.
But you know, if my wife notices that it's noticeably better, then I think we have some hope there.
I think that's very important because, again, I think things like 3D was not contrived, but it was difficult. HDR is a natural experience. Essentially, like you're taking, it's not whether looking through a foggy bathroom window, someone's cleaned it for you, and you see things the way they are. The subtleties, good or bad, are there the way things are natural. And the natural impact is what we appreciate as humans.
And it's totally independent of the distance you have to the screen, of the resolution of the screen. It just has a lot of punch.
And we spent a long time going up and down with tools to expose correctly, using the waveform, showing a line where we are on the log curve, etc. And in the end, we just said, move this slider till it looks like what you're looking at. And that was the right solution. And people could understand that. So we automated a bit more, and I think we're getting very close to hopefully not having that type of thing go wrong.
I would like just to put a word of caution on automating all of this. It's great if everything is compatible and the whole workflow all knows how to use the system. It's a nightmare if anything in your workflow doesn't understand it. And everybody is used to working with HDMI. How reliable is that? One of the big advantages of sticking with a good old HDSDI is you have to still manually set things up, but you know what you got. As things get more automated, it gets more and more difficult to keep control or knowing what you have. So some things, knowing what you have, maybe automating what is coming out and being able to see it, it might actually be a better way than having it automatically set things up. When you set it up manually, you know what you have. And when you're in the middle of a production, you got to know what you have. I mean, reshooting is a expensive way to go.
So I want to jump to a different topic, and we'll open up some questions here at the end. We're getting kind of towards the end here. So it's kind of in the distribution side a little bit, and I know none of us are in that distribution business, but I think that's, and you brought it up, Marc, when you saw it, you have to see it at home. So we know OTT, Amazon, Netflix, they're pushing this, right? How do you see, and futurists looking in the future, how do we see this getting home? And I also just bringing up the whole idea of broadcasting it, how we do that, and it's maybe the HLG kind of conversation. How are we getting this to the house? Because ultimately, this is how we're going to succeed here, right? It has to get to people, and it may be in the theater, but more often, obviously, today, it's going to be at home.
That's going to happen really quickly. I don't know if everybody's aware, the ATSC has already come up with ATSC 3.0. It includes HDR. It also changes the system going away from MPEG and making an IP-based system. So now a broadcaster, if he adopts this system, I think Sinclair is full into this, you're going to be able to get their content in HDR, in 4K, anything you want, any way you want. So you're not just going to be sitting in front of a television anymore. Your TV will see it, your phone will see it, your tablet, you're going to have access to it anywhere. So any display that can tie into this television system now has the ability of receiving an HDR signal. So
that's good news. That's good
Yeah,
news.
I'm sorry. There's actually a demonstration. I think the Alliance is showing a 3.0 demonstration here somewhere at NAB.
Front, right? Yeah.
Is that yeah?
Yeah. It's great. So there's definitely hope then for all this getting out to us.
It's coming.
Yeah, I think, putting it again, the HPA, the Hollywood Professional Alliance, was held in Palm Springs about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
It's basically 800 geeks and post community getting together with the broadcasters. It's a slide roll fest. You had to be there, but it's quite amazing. But for the first time in probably 10 years, the industry consensus panel in terms of broadcasters, where we're going next year, ATSC3 was, yes, we are, it makes perfect sense. IP delivery and HDR was on that as well in terms of we're going to deliver markedly better pictures to the home viewer more easily. And that was a case of, it's a huge benefit in terms of just the visibility factor and the people will see better pictures and they'll be able to hopefully gain some monetary advantage of that and multicasting.
Yeah, spinning off that thought, going back 2 years certainly, a year possibly, HDR was associated with 4K UHD.
Yeah.
And there was a big debate, and I was on the SEMTI study group, and there was a big debate. Do we let HDR touch 1080? Oh, no. Some people, no. It's
has to be Rec 2020
that's
and 4K,
changed.
right?
That's changed. And in the last year, it has changed. I think all broadcasters, even those who are thinking of 4K way down the road, are saying 1080p HDR. And 1080p, they're saying we'll produce in 1080p,
right,
even though we can only transmit 1080i. 1080p production with HDR, convert to 1080i HDR, looks good.
Yeah.
You see an enhancement. It may not be as beautiful as the 1080p,
sure,
but now they see a path.
Right.
That they can be engaged today.
Right.
And that's good
key,
because it means more people engage, more people are learning to solve all the issues with HDR. I found that very encouraging.
That's
and there was a big discussion this weekend at the sports video group.
Right.
All the sports folks were there.
So it can be a reality much sooner
Exactly.
Because we all know getting 4K to the house is a much bigger road, longer road.
And 1080p upscaled in some of these 4K sets looks awfully good.
Looks pretty good.
Looks
Yeah.
awfully good.
I think you have to make the distinction, though, between the non-real-time cine scripted workflow,
Sure.
where we're capturing as much as we want,
Repeat
usually in
data.
some sort of log format,
Right.
and then the EOT of it's being poured over it in post.
Right.
While in a live workflow, you have to bake that in right at the camera. So
Right.
these are totally two different animals: real-time workflow and a non-real-time workflow.
Right. Yeah. And that's where maybe the other curves come in, like an HLG curve, and that creates some complications, confusion. But I know that they're working on. I mean, that doesn't really. People don't. There's two sort of standards of HDR, three standards of HDR.
The HDR 10, hybrid low gamma, and PQ.
PQ. But I think it sounds like we're getting closer to, having them all work together, right? I mean, that's what
Well, they're getting there. I think, originally when Dolby first proposed their system, they put it out as the intent it was going to be used in some type of cinematic or in a long form production. But when the BBC wanted to do their system, they had to fit it into a broadcast system. And I think in the beginning, when we were talking about standardizing all of this, they were two separate entities. I think that's changed now. Dolby has done a lot of work in bringing their system in as a broadcast system and even as a live system with their CMS system.
Smart.
And also, too, the BBC is looking at ways to take HLG and maybe applying it to a long workflow system. So more than, where it used to be you could see one fit into one application, one or the other, it's now kind of graying over. Which, if you're going to use these, now you better understand the advantages and the disadvantages. I think the big thing is when you look at PQ, it's an absolute system.
Right.
So this data value is going to be this light output. So, which is great. It makes it very consistent and makes it very easy to work with until the point is you start working on displays with different brightness levels. So now you get different clipping points. That gets a little confusing. HLG on the other side is an adaptive system, whereas it will fit within the display brightness. Great, you'll see everything all the time. The downside of that, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Depending on the brightness of the TV, you're going to get a different contrast, you're going to have a different look.
Right.
You got to understand this as you move into both of these.
Yeah, so it's the challenges. So let's open up to some questions from the audience. I know Jeff out there, I see him here. This is Jeff Boyle's in the audience. We have to have Jeff ask a question, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Yeah, Jeff.
Okay.
I'll repeat it for the group afterwards. Yeah.
7 years ago, I saw two Dolby monitors side by side with the aircraft footage on. Sold. 600 nits, no question. The big advantage is in the highlights. And the big problem that any of the shooting have is the shadows. Because whilst in Dolby Vision cinema, one of the 100 in the world, you'll see the whole picture. In a high-end grading suite, you'll see the whole picture. You will never see proper shadows on set because you can't spend your time rushing into a black tent, waiting for your eyes to adapt. I'll get fired. Home, people have white painted walls. They close the blinds, the highlights kick into walls, wash the shadows out. So you're all saying, we got all this extra shadow detail, we don't get any that's usable. Anyone with a comment on that?
So just to repeat, and I'll let you comment back directly. Shadow details are, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff, we actually don't want, we probably don't necessarily want that, or we can't expect to actually see it. Yeah. So what does that change for all of us here?
Well, go ahead.
I disagree with the comment, no one ever is going to see that. You're not going to see it now. Now, one of the nice things going on is the display industry is one of the largest industries in technology. There are close to over 1,700 companies working just in device technology alone. So that's a big business. There's a lot of investment. It's coming.
The living room is not the ideal viewing scenario, I think.
Maybe.
That's where people are.
Right. That would be an education thing. That would be where we have to take as an industry to teach these people. Works for me.
I don't think you believe it.
You need the Dolby Vision living room.
Yeah.
Dolby Vision architectural changes.
If you're a real cinephile,
night.
you will buy this.
No, I do think, Jeff, that there is going to be an education and a learning curve. It's going to take time. I can tell you that I finally, it took me some years, but when we sit down to watch a movie, my wife and I, all lights go out. I have a plasma, big 65-inch plasma, and I watched the Crown, Netflix Crown, I binged for the last couple of weeks on it, full of dark scenes. Now, I'm still a little frustrated, but I was very pleased with the amount of the reproduction of those dark scenes. But I set up an artificial system in my living room. I turned all the lights out. Yeah, but I think in time, as HDR is begun to be understood, Home theaters are becoming far more prevalent now. People are investing more in them. My son has just spent a fortune, and he gets it,
and the TV
his
content
kids get it.
is better and better. Yeah.
But isn't it the same argument that you go into your friend's house and their aspect ratio is incorrect, and
Yeah.
these guys are
Always is.
blimped across
Always.
the middle of the,
Yeah,
and they got the sharpness turned up,
Yeah, and the smooth motion, the crazy
and the
stuff.
MPEG coming from the really low bit rate from their
Yeah.
cable TV.
Right.
I mean, isn't that
We can't
exactly
fix
the
all
same
those
thing?
things.
But
You don't have to, you don't have to
have to.
redecorate.
It's
You
just
don't
gonna,
have to
it's the
redecorate.
opportunity to be better that I think HDR offers, right?
Yeah,
It
I
offers
think that's probably true.
the chance
Opportunity,
to be
yeah.
a little bit better than we have today. And some people, just like cinema experience, will beeline to that and spend a lot of money. Some people will say, I'll wait till, like my father, who's right at the end of the bell curve, who waits right till the end and says, I might upgrade my TV to a flat panel now. He tells me 3 months ago, like 10 years into the revolution.
I absolutely love HDR, but we've got to concentrate on the higher end of it because the majority of people are not going to see the black. And as long as we sit here denying that,
no. We're
But
not
you're
denying it,
denying
Jeff.
it.
But your program producers today continue to make all episodic television, your movies, full of dark, moody scenes. And wouldn't we want our masters to have all that information for when the world does become a little more educated and sets are they're improving so rapidly.
I don't think Jeff believes in the utopia. Just for the home viewer, he doesn't believe in the utopia idea of people doing the right thing. I mean, I think TV is getting so good. I mean, I don't know how much TV you all watch now, but The Crown,
watch a lot.
I mean, Netflix, Amazon, I mean, we're all binging left and right, and it's not just us, I don't think. So I think there's a commitment now to the home viewer, which we never had before. So it wouldn't be that important if we didn't have such good content.
Jeff, would you want the TV to sense the environment and then automatically adjust its black levels? Me too.
He wants it to-
That's very
And
scary.
it's being discussed.
He wants it to auto-adjust for you, the viewer. All right.
Automation.
I get it.
But
I think
in the end, you have the same problems in SDR, and you are still going to see a better image in HDR.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Yeah. So, we got to wrap it
How are we
up,
gonna sell product
unfortunately, for the group today. I really appreciate it, guys. We can continue the questions out in the audience here. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Andy.
Welcome. Thanks,
Great
guys.
to meet you all. That was lively.